What is up, Web3 and NFT family and community? It's myself, Jordan Rains, at 50 Shades of Drunk. This is a Real Talk, a Doxed podcast. I am here with a couple of friends of mine from the NFT and Web3 space, Payment Cash, and then you're not Dave versus Axie anymore, as you were on your first foray into the show. Who are you now?
So now I'm Disaster. It's on my own. I am a disaster, and my name is Disaster.
Well, welcome, Disaster. I guess we got a new face for the old Dave versus Axie. Solana Summer has been tough on all of us. You know, identities are changing, things are crashing, things are going up, but we're still here. We are, quote unquote, building, perhaps, but we're at least examining what's being built around us with a little bit of a critical eye and hopefully a positive eye as well. Dave, just quickly, can you update us on Axie? Because you were my first person I really talked to about it. I know a lot has gone down. Just a quick, brief update. What's up with Axie?
Yeah, so man, Axie has had, I don't even remember the last time I was on where they were within the hack and everything else, but Axie's had a lot of challenges, and so they are making some progress to improve with Origin that just launched. And we have land coming hopefully by the end of the year, but they've pivoted to how land's going to work, and they did just add land staking. So right now I'm staking my one land to earn AXS, which is a nice little APR. But yeah, there's just not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, really, it's just the transition that's going into Origin. I will say what I'm going to be streaming in an hour is so basically Axie has allowed, and they're trying to create their IP to be a Pokemon Hello Kitty-esque IP, where they have this one thing where it's all these Axies, they're all unique, but ideally your Axie unlocks access to infinite opportunities. And so they created a I don't like a DAO essentially. I don't even know what the best way to describe it is, but they're giving out grants to community builders to have this community building program where basically indie devs can go and get money from them to go build their platform or game that they want to create. And so one game that is pretty close to being released is now in alpha and like testing for early users is called Axie Doll or Defenders of Lunacia. And it's really fun. Like I am addicted to it. And so to me, like if that can work, there could be some really good burn mechanics created from it. There could be a nice play to earn model that could be built into it too. And so we'll see how it all plays out. But I do think that is very fun. It's just not made by the Sky Mavis team.
Awesome. All right. Well, there's your Axie update with the new Disaster. And then Payment Cash, my guy, what have you been up to? I hear you're trying to get into the Chimpers community. Is that what the word on the street is?
That is the word on the street is, yes. I'm trying to, with the help of Dave, hopefully I can make some trades, something happen, and get into the ecosystem.
Nice.
I think the project is really, really great. And there's not that many projects that are very optimistic for the future in the NFT space, but I think Chimpers is one of them.
Yeah, they seem like a really fun group on Twitter, and their PFPs and all that are really cool. They seem like they have some interesting utility, and the entry price is still, what is it, sub 2 ETH pretty easily. And it seems like it's a great group of people over there in that community. So hopefully you get in there safely, and maybe I'll see you in there soon.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about a couple of things. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of happened in the Web3 space. We'll try to keep it as thoughtful as we can, but just offer our commentary. Myself, I'm just a regular old guy. Dave here, he's an NFT influencer of the highest regard these days. And then we have Payment Cash, who has so much life experience. It's unreal. The guy has seen and done pretty much everything. So we're just going to offer you some of our thoughts and comments on the things that have happened in the broader Web3 space. And we'll kind of start with a big brain topic just in general. We're going to just talk about the kind of the incentive system that is in NFTs and what it really means. Dave put out a thread a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was like a week and a half ago about this. No, it was less than that. It was like a week ago because I remember this space taking place maybe last Thursday. But I'm going to read it off because Dave's throat was bothering him just a little bit. He has been a little ill. We are thankful that he was able to make it out here with us today, though. And then we'll hear some comments on from himself and from Cash about what they think incentives should look like and can continue to evolve into in Web3. So, all right. So this is from Dave. Well, not Dave versus Zax anymore. At Disaster_ETH. He says, let's talk incentives, specifically project incentives. On On Board Clint and Carson Turner's space last night, I brought up the problem that technically the best thing for a project in NFT secondary is NFT secondary sales. Unfortunately, this does not align with the community vision. When a project mints out, the normal plan should be that they can achieve their roadmap with the funds raised. If there are excess funds being raised by secondary sales, this in theory should only cushion the project's wallet and allow for more activations in the future. From the free mint meta we have been experiencing, this converts all the funds raised to secondary sales. This means the best thing the project can do is sell your assets at any price so they can scrape the 4 to 10% that they're going to get on the transaction. I believe established projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club and other side meta have realized that they make more money from flips. Well, why why would someone want to sell as an active holder? There are a few reasons. One, project vision is not aligned. So you're no longer aligning with the vision of the project. You might want to leave for that reason. Two, the sale price is worth too much not to sell for personal situation. So you have realized enough of a gain to where it makes sense for you to leave the project. And then radio silence was a third reason. He said they do not know what comes next. They're losing interest and they want to move on to something new, which is a normal part of human nature. Radio silence, in my opinion, is the most effective way to cause someone to actively leave a project they enjoy. The person may even take a loss when they have entered. Unfortunately, this does not matter to the team because they still make their share from the sale, loss, or gain. So, an even crazier approach was that of at Zagabond did with the Azuki official. Sales had slowed down. I believe someone was going to slander his past. He realized he could front run it and hoped his most loyal fans of Azuki would stick around. This was a crazy day if you were around in NFT history. This led to a 38K ETH volume in 6 days. That is 60+% the Azuki official last 90-day volume. At a 5% take rate and ETH at $1,200, this is $2.28 million bagged in 6 days. Not too bad for a a bad situation. But let's look at the new approach by Doodles, the bucket auction. And I'm just going to slow down here because I don't want to go too much into it, but I want to kind of give you an opportunity, and I will link all of the stuff I post here in the description of the podcast and in the description of the video. But Dave, I want to go ahead and just, I've been narrating for a minute. What are your kind of thoughts and comments on this thread now that's been up for a week?
Yeah, I think it all still reigns true, especially as you start to look at and I don't know if we're going to talk about the Kevin Rose Moonburst thing.
Yes.
But if we do allude to that a little bit, you start to create this model where for someone it depends on what the goals are of the company. And so what I would say is if you look at a novice NFT trader, right? Say that I'm going to come in my very first day in the Web3. I go to OpenSea because I hear it's still the biggest, marketplace. You jump in OpenSea. What do you see on that homepage? The main thing you see is okay, a couple spotlight collections, which maybe you could pay to be there, or they're new. Otherwise, you scroll down and you find out you see the top 10 volume. And so naturally, I think as a person, you're going to say, okay, a lot of volume must be a reason that there's someone wants to buy all these things. And now say you watch it for a week. Well, you see in a week, Bored Ape Yacht Club's always there. Mutants are always there. Right now, Other Deeds always there. And then the other 7 kind of fluctuate, right? Sometimes it's punk. Sometimes it's something else. Personally, I think that collections are starting to realize, well, I need to find some reason to consistently be there, whatever that is. And I think that, unfortunately, within the Moonbirds ecosystem, they realized, and I call this out early on, they initially set up their nesting project to be that when you nest, you get bonus rewards for being a long-term nester. If that they said you could make it one time a way to move wallets to go to your hardware wallet, but they couldn't do anything else. Unfortunately, though, they said if you de-nest, you lose all your nesting rewards. And so I went on and made a thread initially this is the dumbest thing ever. So you're going to tell me if I hold for a year, I'm like a platinum nester, and I now want to realize some profits. If I de-nest to go sell it, I now have a floor Moonbird that has no nesting benefit because this is the way they set it up. So they realized that really quickly. And a week later, he's like, oh, never mind. You can keep your nesting rewards. Once you've hit a tier, your bird will stay that tier. And obviously that just made the most common sense. They've now evolved. And I think that what they had realized, they were never on the homepage because there was only ever 100 listed. They might sell 2 a day. And so that's 50 ETH volume. they're not doing anything from a traction standpoint. Because again, the incentives are aligned with the staking and putting it away in a wallet, not with day traders. And so you removed a lot of that
volume,
a lot of the volume, but the desire of traders to come in and kind of flip, because there wasn't this kind of healthy trading ecosystem. And even if I don't love my moonbirds, that I had a pink one and I really wanted a blue one, I can't even try to play that game, because if it takes me 6 days to do that, well, now I'm 6 days behind on nesting. And so there's a lot of challenges I think are created from that. And you see, I don't know what the volume is today. I saw it was in the top 10, but you
Yeah,
start
pretty
to see
high.
they're creating these secondary sales. And again, they shouldn't need the money, but what I think they do want is they want the attention.
Yep.
And so there's a weird dynamic there too, where as far as the incentives, like I've thought about, if I were to create a project, I don't know if it's possible to build into a smart contract, but I was going to throw it out to people. Like, would you rather pay the 5 to 10% you pay right now in royalty fees, or would you rather pay 2.5% to OpenSea or whatever marketplace, and then pay like 30% or 40% of any profit realized? And so what if you, because then if you lose, the only thing you pay is OpenSea. So if it's like, hey, everything does suck and I just need cash right now, okay, you pay 2.5 to OpenSea. I'm not taking anything from you because you spent 10 ETH and you're selling it at 8. Sucks, but it is what it is. Net, you're still losing money. Now you might actually be up on fiat if ETH ran crazy and maybe there's incentive then to do it. But I thought about that a lot. Like, it'd be really cool to maybe have a project created that way, that, you only pay from your profits, because I think it would change the dynamic as to how you're viewing the model of what's being created, right? So if you could flip it up and say you make 0.2 ETH, you still got 30% of that, but you're not, it's only of that little bit that you're making in the profit, versus I'm always giving up 5% anytime I do any transaction with this NFT. So really interesting thoughts as to how they could maybe realign those incentives. But for any project to really last long term, they're going to need these secondary sales. And it's a question like, how much volume can you realistically create in secondary sales without having, crazy hype or massive traction from bigger influencers that are rocking and using their PFP within
It really, just to switch gear, it really comes down to knowing how to continue to create revenue streams and cash flow whenever the minting process and the hype has stopped, and you have kind of your established holders, customers, investors, however you want to call it. Cash, you had some comments on this. You posted a really good thread the other day, so I wanted to let you hop in here and kind of comment too about, what Dave is pointing out and what his thread was talking about is, how do things continue? Like, selling is, in the community-based model, you're supposed to stay. But if all the value comes from selling, what are founders, what are the people in charge doing or looking at to kind of continue to create revenue and grow and scale? And I think you're a great person to ask about scaling, because you have a lot of success in industries that, don't have to do with people being on Twitter. So.
Yeah, I mean that's the $1 million question, right? I mean that's the thing that I think Dave is pointing out to it as well. It's really hard because there's I think a lot of people are learning from the founders, from the community members, from the investors. Everyone is just trying to figure out a system, because till today everyone tried to kind of like copy because Bored Ape Yacht Club worked. So everyone's trying to like imitate their steps, but they're not Bored Ape Yacht Club. Like, that is the problem. And for them to create avenues of income for themselves other than, like, say, royalties, right? There's got to be another way for them. Like, even if, say, like I was saying in the thread, in a Web3, if I need money as a business, I have avenues of getting that funding somehow, collateral, whatever. There's different ways of actually buying time to be survive, per se, till the market comes back, because you're not just dealing with NFT markets, you're dealing with crypto markets too. That's why it's a little bit more dangerous than, say, stocks or any other investments, because there's things that are totally out of your control. The project could do everything right, and the floor price goes from 0 to 50, but the ETH drops 70%, you're in the negative again. Like, you could do everything right. So it's really, really, I think I look at it as very fun times, because I'm invested in the industry, but I'm very peculiar in trying to figure out a remedy, like what Dave just said was a great idea. Just like taxes, right? If you don't make money, you don't pay, but if you gain, Uncle Sam wants his share, and that's fair. I think I think that puts more pressure on the project to perform because if they don't, they're gonna die. And I think that is what's needed in this space, is more credibility for the founders, because they got away with so much shit in the beginning. Sorry if I used a bad word, but I think they got away with so much stuff in the beginning that right now, the market is getting bare, the sentiment's getting bare, and people are actually start pinpointing different issues that they were not looking at before, because everyone was making money, no one cared. But as soon as the market kind of went on a downturn, I think everyone is like zooming and finding out different avenues for that. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Great topics there. We both of you managed to not bring up IP rights, which are the next thing we're going to talk about, because for a long time we've been told, IP rights are one of the benefits to holding this whatever particular NFT it may be. And it seems like every day we're finding out that maybe that statement or that ideal is not something we should be holding on to as tightly as we thought we should. And in the broader space, we're told you can leverage the IP, you can sell the IP, you can license the IP, and these are all great grand concepts. But a lot of people at scale don't know how to do those things, myself included. So to say that that's a value prop to customers is kind of tough. But we did have a big moment yesterday, and I don't want again, this is commentary on what's happening, because the public sentiment on what we saw happen yesterday and is still ongoing. We don't know what the overall consensus is going to be on this, but a very large project as of yesterday removed their IP rights and actually moved to a CC0 format. That is Collective Commons. What is the right word here? I don't even see it in here. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong tab. Sorry, guys. CC0 here with Moonbirds. And so now basically what this means is that people bought an NFT where one of the primary utilities or perks, what they were told, was the ability to leverage IP rights. And now that has been removed. What are your guys' thoughts on this move by the Moonbirds and Oddities team and Kevin Rose? And how do you think it's going to play out? We're watching it happen in real time. Literally, I haven't been on Twitter in like an hour, so we've probably missed the next, chapter in this saga. But I'm interested. What are your guys' thoughts on this ongoing sort of narrative and discussion around CC0 versus IP and what it means for the space as far as its ethos, its growth, and its trajectory and its infrastructure?
You want to go first, Cash, or me?
I'll say something, then I'll keep it short, because I think you have more wisdom than I do. But I have an experience, because what I was trying to do, I'm invested in several projects. So one of the ones that I wanted to actually go after the IPs, and I was going to start creating a CBD brand. So I actually went after this, like with lawyers. I called, US PAP, tried to figure out all the things that comes with IP. I contacted the founder. I'm like, do I need the paper? How do I know that I own the IP rights to this token? He said, oh, I'm just telling you. I said, no. The US government needs some documentation that for me to present that I own the IP rights to this NFT, and they don't understand NFTs. Do you have any documentation for me? And he said, no, we just will not, take any action upon you for using that, because you actually own the token. And if you sell the token, then you lose the rights. I'm like, well, if I'm starting a business, definitely I'm not selling the token. But I want to know from like my rights, how can I protect them? And he just said, oh, we won't come after you. You can do whatever you want. And I said, okay, maybe that's the way. So I called the government and I got the lawyers involved. And even the lawyer was like, how is that possible? So we talked with the government agency, and they said, the best way for you to actually trademark your IP rights is by actually having a transaction. So you create the project, you do the packaging, you actually do a couple of transactions, then you submit that to us. We will patent that as this token, this ID, this image with this packaging is patent to payment cash. And with that, if anyone goes and copies, you can do cease and desist. So I was like, this does not make any sense to me. Like for me, it's something that was very unclear. Even the government didn't know what to do. So Dave, maybe you can clarify for us, please.
Sure. So the initial IP side, so why you shouldn't? What project was that?
Quirkies.
Oh, okay. So what it should be is that the Quirkies are going to have a TOS. And so if they don't have a TOS, that TOS in there should say you own the IP to all the art, and art was done and owned by Finch One, which has then been paid for through the Quirkies organization. The Quirkies brand, which has its own trademark, has given full IP commercial rights to all of its holders of these NFTs. Then your proof of that is the blockchain. And so as long as a TOS exists from the company that initially had the IP, then that's yours, plus the blockchain should be your proof of ownership of said IP. That's kind of step one. Where it evolves, though, is within CC0. And so why the Moonbirds thing? So the big clarification there, Jordan, is that Moonbirds did not take away, or Kevin did not take away Moonbirds holders' IP. They just gave the IP to everybody.
Okay.
And so what changes now is like you can move back to Quirkies or even Bored Ape, right? So if someone uses my mutant on a packaging, Yuga could go sue them for using my IP as like a partnership brand, and they wanted to cover me within it. However, most likely Yuga's not going to do it. So in order for me to fight that, I have to then choose to do a cease and desist from my own, because I legally own that mutant ape that someone's stealing to make art or t-shirts or whatever off of. With CC0, what the change is there is that actually anyone can now go do that. And so from a brand, so like what you saw from I don't remember his name. It's like Latrox. But what he was working on with his glitch, he has the glitch Moonbird. I think he minted it. He had a 6-figure licensing deal I've been working on for months to utilize the glitch Moonbird. The company that was going to pay him 6 figures does not need to pay him any money anymore to go use the glitch Moonbird. So why would they? So the ability to license your Moonbird is now gone, because there's no reason for a company to pay you, because you don't. It's CC0. So it changes the way in which and then we can talk about that you just pulled up there too in a second. But it changes the way in which your actual ownership is. So all that you have right now is essentially you own the actual Mona Lisa, right? You own the Mona Lisa in your wallet for each Moonbird you own. However, for every time that someone puts it into a history book, or every time that someone puts it on a t-shirt, or every time someone puts it anywhere else, you have no legal right to go after them because they're using your art. It's just that you own the original, and hopefully other people see value in that in the future. And now that pivots, and some people have talked about it, that like if Moonbirds becomes this massive brand that grows and evolves, and Kevin can somehow rocket ship this thing up, maybe it doesn't matter. But there's a unique part there too. If you want to scroll up, Jordan.
Yeah, which one?
On number 12,
12.
that he pointed out. It says, while CC0 does not cover trademarks, we're excited to announce the upcoming formation of the Moonbirds DAO. But essentially, the trademark means that, so why Moonbirds 2 got taken off of OpenSea is because it used the name and the brand image of Moonbirds. But if they did not use those two things, so if they called it Skybirds and they used, say, the original Moonbirds logo, but it was pink and it had like a different, and just had anything else on it, whatever, Skybirds underneath it, it would all be legitimate, and OpenSea would not have taken it down because it is CC0. And so that's where they kind of shot themselves in the foot. Like, but at the same time, there's no reason to own those either, because why would you pay for an NFT if you have the art for free? So if you want to go make a brand tomorrow with Kevin Rose's Moonbird, you can. And so like you can go take his Fire Moonbird right now, go slap it on a bunch of t-shirts, call the brand Firebird, and just start fucking ripping shirts, doing whatever you want with it. And there's nothing else. That's nothing that Kevin can do for you.
What's the advantage of this move?
Okay. Great question. And so why I think Kevin got caught up. So there's two reasons why people think that he did this, or they did this. One, AI, and AI Birds was a great example. And I heard that there was a great show earlier, Coffee with Captain, where they were talking about this, and I was on the show, but they were talking about how when AI Moonbirds came out, Moonbirds only went to them and said, hey, change the name. We don't give a shit. But the Moonbirds holders were like, hold on. They literally just took every Moonbirds and their ID number, ran it through a nature AI thing, and then put it on the blockchain. So if you had Moonbird 8144, 8144 in AI Moonbirds was the exact same Moonbird, just in a nature AI filter. And so the person that owned that one is like, fuck, like they've sold and made royalties off of my Moonbird. I want to go collect those royalties. Moonbirds proved at that point they didn't give a shit. They're like, whatever, we're not going to go fight that battle. We're just going to fight our trademark battle because we care about our brand. And so there was already kind of a weird province there. And I think they started to realize there was going to be more and more of these, that they're like, fuck it, we're just going CC0 because we're not fighting all these legal battles. And they're only going to fight after their trademark and their brand. They're not going to fight off of all the art that's been derivative from it. So where does this evolve to be a net positive, right? And so the guy, Grant Yun, do you know who Grant Yun is?
Sounds familiar, but no.
Okay, so Grant Yun is a digital artist, but when you see his art, you'll see it's almost like a simple, typically kind of naturey paintings. We're like they're Grant Yun, Y-U-N,
Y-U-N. Sorry.
Yep, sorry. And so yeah, Grant Riven Yun. There you go. And so you can see like his cow thing up there. It's like it's the painting that actually is of the cow, the original one. It's just the same green color across the square, and then there's this cow in the middle of it, and that's it. And so you can see up top like the neighborhood one, that's his banner. That's another example of his art. So it's very simple, but you know exactly what it is. And he's become really popular. But his style is obviously, you see a Grant Yun, you kind of know his style. So here's a great example where the artist that's been one of the original artists that has done this for a long time, he can become, obviously he's not a Pepe guy. Those are just gifts. But his art style, you can even go like to Super Rare is probably the best example if you click the link in his bio. But his style can then become CC0. So all of his art then becomes CC0. So if you want to own the original Grant Yuns from him, you can. However, it now allows anyone to go make derivatives of it because it makes the artist Grant Yun popular. And so if you want to own an actual Grant Yun, it makes sense. Like the same thing happened with Xcopy. He went CC0. Makes sense. If Gremplin did it, it would make sense. So if you're truly an artistic visionary where you have one artistic style that is very apparent whenever anyone looks at art, they're like, oh shit, that's a Grant Yun, or oh man, that's an Xcopy. Those are the right people to be doing CC0. Because now it allows anyone to go profit off of his style. But when someone wants to go find the person that created that style, it's
they go to him.
It's Grant Yun. Same thing with like a Picasso, like or
Shepard Fairey with the Obama and the change,
right, or the Warhols, like with the soup. Like you have all those things where it's like once you know the artist and you can tell that art, you're like, well, if I'm a collector, I want the artist art. I don't necessarily care if it's I don't want the derivative. Maybe I want to buy the shirt because it's cool, and I'll pay $10 or $20 to the guy on the street for the Grant Yun lookalike. But if I'm the collector of the art, I want the art. And so you can see the cow. The cow is the best one because it's literally just the same green block with this cow in the middle of it. But it's just
amazing.
It's so good. And so to me, this is where CC0 makes a ton of fucking sense. Is if you're an artist and you're unique in the way that your art is derivative and derived. It does not make a lot of sense in my opinion. Like, excuse me, for the CC0, it's a terrible move for a branding strategy. Unless if all you care about is a top level brand and not the IP holders. We're like, Bored Ape is trying to have, hey, all you apes, go make cool shit with your apes, and that'll raise the entire level of the brand and the recognition. But all of you should be utilizing the IP that you own. And so that's the worst thing that happened here is that they don't have any IP anymore. Like if you're going to take a day in New England, you're not going to go like sell that to someone to put on shirts. Like you're not going to go whatever, start a brand logo with it. Like it's just not going to be anything. Unless you're going to Yankee Candle to put that on a day in New England, it's probably not going to be a thing. And so, but for the ape side or for the Moonbirds or for Quirkies or for Doodles, like that's exactly what you want to do, right? You want to create this guy that is you, or like if you're creating like this, a podcast, and you want to recognize yourself as a digital identity, your digital identity, you don't actually own it. But if you imagine you're so a great example, probably the best way to put this into perspective. If you own your IP, if you're Kevin Durant, you own everything that is Kevin Durant. No one can copy and rift off that. When you don't own your IP and like the NPA goes CC0 for all of its NBA players, well, now anyone can do whatever the fuck they want with Kevin Durant's name or LeBron James's name, and they can put it on anything. And so that's kind of the key difference here. Like Moonbirds sold it as if like, oh, hey, you can go create whatever brand you want to be. You can go be the Tiger Woods or LeBron James with your Moonbird. And then they're like, nah, never mind. You're just going to be a part of this Moonbirds ecosystem. And yeah, now you own the original. And that's pretty much it. So it killed everything that comes back with the IP that it's brutal.
And there's a huge, and that's the kind of broader conversation is, it's all so far in my experience, IP rights are always something people talk about leveraging, but I very rarely see leveraged. You know what I mean? And it's like all these people are up in an uproar, but I've seen one person who's been financially affected with a deal. And I'm sure the guy who's financially affected by that deal is probably going to make other deals with other NFTs. I'm sure he's going to be fine. So I kind of wonder, it's CC0, right? That's how you say. Okay. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic sometimes. I'm sure you guys heard me in the earlier part, but it makes you wonder why more people are not more into the concept of CC0, because it seems like that's kind of a Web3 thought process, an open source, peer-to-peer sort of network, where rights and ownership and turning the lights on and off were purposely built this place where things like that are not supposed to be necessarily celebrated. So it's curious. And Kevin kind of mentioned that at the very end of, what he said. It was kind of call it flower power, whatever you want, but maybe, rose-colored glasses on, but it resonated with me as somebody who's kind of been around the Web3 space for a while. And it really is just like, it just started out with a bunch of libertarian Bitcoiners, buying drugs on the internet and guns, you know what I mean? And and it wasn't really, it was about that idea of decentralizing and going kind of out. And it's come to a kind of a corporate ownership, create businesses, create brands. And those two things they seem like they're very much at odds in our space right now, from a narrative standpoint and from a financial standpoint and from a platform standpoint, with OpenSea being somewhat centralized in what they choose and choose not to do. But I'm interested, Cash, what are your thoughts on do you really think that IP leverage is something that's going to last as a useful utility? Or are we going to see more of these brands or companies switch to this idea of raising the entire brand by not giving one or two people rights over one thing, but giving a collective rights over everything? What are your thoughts on that? Just as a more of a meta conversation. It sounds like you.
Yeah, the question that I actually want to ask Dave is do we really have IP rights? Like PFPs do really have IP rights?
Can I jump in there real fast too?
Because from my research, how can you allocate centralization on blockchain? That's what it means, right? When you own the NFT on a blockchain, you own the token, right? So if you want to put on the blockchain a centralization, which you have to say, hey, this blockchain is owned by Jordan, or it's owned by Disaster, it's owned by me. So you have to centralize and decentralize. Am I wrong, or can you please someone explain this to
me? You go, Jordan.
Well, as somebody who's involved in the whole Ryder Rips type of thing, it's interesting because his whole concept is you can't copy an NFT, and what you're buying is a token. You're not buying an image. You're not buying art unless it is very, 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 very explicitly spelled out to you in a certain fashion. And I think I don't know what the right answer is, but I will say that combating IP right now, I'm not scared at all. Dave, I love you, but I wouldn't be scared at all to go right click, copy all your stuff and just make things with it. Cause I don't necessarily know that you're going to come at me like that. I mean, would it hurt your brand or would it help your overall brand or your sales? So, and it's and even if you did, what kind of firepower would you come with that? There's a lot of people that seem to be scared of repercussions, but I'm like, what are the repercussions? I have a hexed Ryder Rip ape and I'm still here. You know, the Yuga guys haven't come and taken me. No one's come and given me a fine. And it's just it makes me wonder, what's the point of having these kind of rules or talks about rules if there is no enforcement of them? And again, it comes back to the structures of the whole space, which is kind of, it seems to me, kind of ambivalent.
So, okay, so there's a couple questions there. From a, do we really own the IP? That depends on the TOS. And so, like you saw today, or maybe you didn't, but Azerbala, which is Jenkins Ballet, like official PFP that will come from their stuff. Azerbala just came out and said, hey, we have an irrevocable IP ownership to the people that own their PFPs. That is a very big distinction. It doesn't sound like a big distinction, but it really is into what your ownership of that IP is. And so what that means is that in any future sales or endeavors, they cannot revoke this access from you because of the initial TOS and the terms that you had. You would at that point have a lawsuit available to all of the holders of Azerbala or Azerian PFPs to sue the new owner because they revoked that from you. The crucial difference here is you do not have that right in Moonbirds. Moonbirds had in their disclosure that they were able to change these rights at any time based on their own discretion. And so, like, so I heard some people on the Moonbird space, they're like, oh, I bet there's going to be some lawsuits coming up from this. And like, there might be lawsuits. They don't really have a leg to stand on because it says that they can change these. And so that's a huge difference there too. Technically, Bored Apes are in that same camp where they could pivot and change them too. It is a little bit concerning. But I think really at the heart of it, it's more that what you don't want is you don't want to have this CC0 ownership model because you don't really own anything. All you just own is the proof of ownership of the initial one that now has full, availability to be used by anyone, anywhere. The fact that you're right, Jordan, I'm probably not going to come and, have repercussions to you if you go and use all my NFTs into whatever brand you're going to create. That all comes to a point though, right? If you're making $1,000 a month, it's probably not worth it for me to go to a legal team, do a cease and desist, take you to court to come get my royalties. You're making $100,000 a month. It is 100% worth it for me to go and claim the right to my IP and my royalties. And that's a key fucking difference. Because for Moonbirds right now, when you're making $100,000 a month on my Moonbird, I can't do anything anymore. Like, that is gone. However, if you do that with my ape, I can come and take those rights back. And there's a part there too that's really important because you're right. It's also understanding, like, why is Ryder Rips and BAYC? What's the lawsuit about? The lawsuit is actually around trademarks, not around IP theft. And so for them, they're coming after them for using their logo and using their name beyond anything else, not because I think that they still believe that once it's on the chain, you own the rights to your, like, that proves that is the original Mona Lisa, right? You don't have a copy. Whereas yours is clearly proven as a copy. Bored Ape is coming after it from that standpoint, like, hey, okay, it's a copy, but like at the same time, you can't be stealing the trademark of our brand. We're going to defend it at whatever cost. And so that's kind of the key difference there. But I think that that's something, again, like, I'm okay if people were to use my, apes or doodles or whatever, because it will help grow the validity of me owning that asset as a thing. But obviously that all changes if everything were to go CC0, because at that point there really wouldn't be much of a reason to own something. And that's where, again, the artist side, I think it does make a lot of sense. I think it's really cool, but yeah, I don't know.
Again, it circles back around to if ultimately we're buying access, then the most important thing theoretically should be the token, and so that it kind of we feel like it's been a kind of a circular talk to some degree. And again, I want to express we don't have all the answers. We're watching this happen in real time with you all, and thankful for anybody's comments or things that they have noticed in their communities, their NFT spaces, any projects that they kind of like or are. Just we want feedback. We want information from anybody and everybody that hears this and sees this. And what are your all thoughts on that? I don't really have any other big brain topics. We went over we went over the IP versus CC0, a little bit of the news. That was the big news, really, was the transition. We're watching that happen right now. I mean, it's been like 24 hours maybe. So we'll see how this all plays out in the public eye as well as the financial sector and legally. But Any other topics you guys want to, cruise over for a little bit? We have a little bit more time. I'm willing to talk about.
I want to ask Dave a question. What projects do you know have that TOS?
I know Bored Ape has a TOS. I know Doodles does. Obviously, Azerbala does.
I bet Azuki does.
I don't know if Azuki does or not. I'd imagine they do. Pretty much anything that's like legitimate should have a TOS. I'm shocked Quirky's doesn't, honestly. It doesn't make a ton of sense why they wouldn't want to have a TOS. That might just be a mistake or an oversight from them in setting it up. But yeah, I think if actually that's probably a pretty good assessment point, is if you're to evaluate a project, if a project doesn't have a TOS, it's probably not worth your time investing in, because that means they don't really care about their own brand or their own IP or your IP. If they don't have an actual terms of service to explain what each variable of your ownership rights are and their ownership rights are. So might be worth looking into and understanding that, and something to harvest into further. But like Clone X does too. And so like I think a lot of those things that like are really legit, that are trying to protect things in certain ways, will definitely have a TOS, because they don't want certain things to happen, right? And so like Doodles is not fully open. Clone X wasn't for a while. They now kind of are, but they aren't, because they still can't do certain things like competing against Nike, or like there's still some things you can't do, even though they say it's open and full IP. So, but all of them are mostly just on their website. You should be able to find their TOS. If they're not directly on their website, it would be through a link within their Discord, I would imagine.
Does Cool Cats have TOS?
I would imagine Cool Cats has TOS.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the thing, because I keep seeing tweets by, I guess I'm a holder of Quirky, so I can talk about it. But I'm just saying, like, I see those tweets from Centrobos mentioning the IP rights, and then again, I'm just dumbfounded, because when I contacted him personally, he just said, "Oh, we won't come after him." Like, do you have any piece of paper that I can see, that I can have, that I can show the U.S. government, my lawyers? I want to build this brand off this Quirky PFP. And he said, just go ahead. We'll support you. And I was a little bit confused.
I have noticed that as well in certain projects. It's, again, with the IP, it almost takes the responsibility of the project from any way, shape, or form off of the people who created it, and suddenly puts it onto the people who have bought into it. Now you have to add the value. Now but it's all borderless and limitless. You can do anything. You can build anything. But like, people need structure. People want limitations. People ask for that. And if you can't direct them to that, it really it's there's a word for it when you have too many options. You know what I mean? You just kind of get. It's like when you sit there and you scroll Netflix, you never pick a show. You'll spend there 16 minutes, 18 minutes. That's a half a movie, not picking something, not taking action. So I think that smart and thoughtful founders and brand aware people know that people want structure. And if you have a community and you have people in your community that are capable of things, it's like a coach. You can't just throw somebody on the field. You have to say, stand here, do this. We know you can do it. We want you to do it. So I say leadership is something we could look to. And again, there's indications of good and bad leadership. Are terms and service there? No. Okay. Are they being updated? Like maybe they weren't there day one. Okay. 14 days in. That's fine. Whatever. 30 days. Cool. 90 days in. Where are we at? Are we taking this seriously? Are we moving our project forward? And are there indications of that happening? So these are things you could definitely keep an eye out for. It looks like Dave just sent me the terms of service for Cool Cats, so I'm going to pull that up on the screen here for us, because they exist, and let's take a look at them.
Yeah, and so like it's again, through most of the websites you should be able to find it, but I just pulled it up in 30 seconds. But yeah, I think that it's actually a pretty interesting thing to consider, because I think and a big part there too is like if they're just like kind of copy pasted from someone else, then maybe that's not a good sign. But I would assume that if they actually have a terms and conditions, then they're taking at least their branding pretty seriously.
Yes, and that's an indication, again, of health and expected growth, anticipated growth. You want to have, again, I'm not a super smart, organized guy, but I would say if I wanted to scale, I would make sure that I had some structure to keep things going a certain way. You don't want to just go in all directions. That's chaos. That's not control. That's not intention. That's more of a, riding the wave, I guess. But Anywho, interesting here. Looks like I know Cool Cats have their sort of. I mean, the floor price is the floor price. I don't even think floor price is such an important conversation anymore either, because again, we have to build something worth buying the floor. You know what I mean? Like, what access do I get? A conversation I think on our next show, if you guys want to come back on in the future, is platforms and like where NFTs take place. I think right now that's one of our big issues is we have the tokens, but they don't really truly give us anywhere to unlock or activate things. You know what I mean? It's very, very siphoned into certain individual places. I can't just like log into Netflix and it just like knows, okay, well, I have a non-fungible film. So I get like a certain library that no one else gets. Token integration and NFT integration into the platforms we're already using right now, I think is kind of the um, big missing thing right now. And I think we're going to get there. I think it's going to be guys in conversations like us, you know, keeping the ball rolling, whether it be a good ball or a bad ball. Just keep it bouncing. We'll get there. You know, we're 5 minutes into the first quarter. Okay, there's no problem being 20 points down right now. We just got to take it seriously. You know what I'm saying? So, Payman, what do you want? You got any final comments here? I feel like we're.
I think Dave has to go, right? It's 3:10. Yes.
Yeah, Dave's got to go keep the Axie boat afloat for the cause, for the culture. Keep influencing those people out there. You know how it goes.
Yeah, we'll keep on influencing.
Yeah, I don't know when you have time to redo this. Maybe we can do about different projects that we're in together or we're in together. Or
I know you guys were talking about Chimpers earlier. I don't know if you've made a deal while we've been working here or not, but I know we're all in Quirkies together at least. Boki, I think, are you guys in Boki as well?
I have 2 left.
I have a Boki. Maybe Quirkies is our only cross project. I have a Rider Rips BAYC. So I hopefully Dave doesn't ghost me all of a sudden, but I think Dave's cooler than that.
Yeah, I'm obviously not a fan of the RRBAYC. I just hate Rider Rips.
Yeah, he is not like a good person. I don't think anybody's confused themselves with that though.
No, I mean, I'd rather be flexing NFTs I actually own than things I just kind of like are fake own. But yeah, I don't know. It's I think Chimpers is really strong, and I think that like the one of the few things that Chimpers did, I think Chimpers is going to be a lot like Jenkins, a lot, or maybe the other way. Jenkins is going to be a lot like Chimpers. Both of them are actually derivatives of Bored Ape Yacht Club, but they've been building and selling NFTs for over a year now. And it was slow grinds where they created lore and comic books or stories. And so Jenkins did kind of like the writer's room where you could start doing licensing and doing all that stuff. And then Chimpers had done like, hey, you could put your apes kind of in like this little story we're going to create showing the apes doing things IRL. And then they're going to relaunch. And then from all of that derivative and creating this community and engaging kind of the Bored Ape community, they are now going to end up creating their own PFP. And so that is where Chimpers was born, and that is going to be where Azerbal is born. And so I think for me, that is a really bullish way to kind of come into the space. Not necessarily the derivative is the right way to go, because that maybe isn't for many. But they use their IP to then create this community to then grow. I would say more of the ideology that you can start as one thing to eventually become the PFP. Like everyone thinks you got to go PFP first, then everything else. I think a lot of the projects we're going to see come out in the next whatever are going to go a different way. And they're going to go from a, whatever, a box or a key or whatever it is to eventually then become their PFP. And so they want to kind of, and it'll be a slow grind. I think what Nouns DAO did was super smart, and like how they're just slowly selling nouns and letting the floor price become the floor price. It's the same thing I think a lot of other projects are going to start looking into, is just how do we slowly build a community without oversaturation to eventually get to a point where we want to kind of like, all right, we are now X. And that's where kind of Chimpers was TBAC, which TBAC stands for the Bored Ape Chronicles. Like it's like it was. And so we went from the Bored Ape Chronicles to now, okay, we are planting our flag. We are the Chimpers. And so I think that to me is like a really cool transition into going from, all right, we were as a derivative, we're making cool things kind of for and with the community, to now we are our own separate entity. Like I think another example is similar is going to be Paper D Studios. I don't know if you know them, but they did an NFT called Bored to Death. And they've done 5 derivatives. And you've probably seen the derivatives before. It's like they do the fat ape, they do the saluting ape, they did like a cryptodes ape. And so you get all these derivatives for owning the NFT, but there's only 100 of them. And they have like a 2 or 3 floor right now. But you could see that again too, like if they were to, if he were to want to make his own project, he has 100 invested people already that have already had some value from him. But he started as like kind of a much more organic community through utilizing kind of the Bored Ape side of it.
Cash, speaking of community and just keeping the conversation going around, utility. I had a tweet pulled up here earlier, but is community more important than utility? Here it is. As coming from the Quirkies project where we all met, where everything, the community is the utility. What are your thoughts on this as a sort of a meta? Do you think that the community as the utility can really make it? And if not, or if it can, probably not in the iteration it is now, what kind of tweaks or thoughts do you have about, growing community and making sure communities maintain a high level of value for the people that are there?
Well, I think community, I guess, is us, right? We are the customers of the project, and we get along. We spend valuable amount of time in spaces, onboarding people, telling other people about the project, liking, retweeting. But that can only go so far. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in my life in the past year or two was from Steve Harvey. He said loyalty has an expiration date. And that is exactly the case when it comes to community, because it comes to a certain point that people just get tired when they see there's no connection with the project, or they're not getting acknowledged, recognition, rewards. They're like, I'm putting 50 hours, 60 hours a week into this to build this community, but like I don't have any benefits from it. The project is not going well. I don't have open communication with the founders. I don't see any added value. For me to be a listener and for me to be a host of a space really makes no difference at the end of the day in my life. So it's like you have to find ways. One of the things that really irritated me with all this stuff, that's the reason I can kind of shift to Boki. I'll bring this up a little bit. But the reason I came there, because I was invited to help advise and build a community. And when I went in there, I've just noticed that I was like, if you want to build a community, you have to start rewarding people that host spaces. You have to give them something for them to be intrigued in doing this. Because first of all, this is a real job. It's a 24/7 job. Like you kind of have to say goodbye to your IRL life and be on Web3 space working to make this project grow. But what are you kind of benefiting? Like if the guy who's holding your space is 50 hours a week and needs a cell phone, his iPhone is broken, I don't have to tell the founder, hey, ship him an iPhone. Like this is something that it's so like, I just don't understand. A lot of people talk about Web2 success, but it seems like all of those successes they forgot and they didn't bring none of it to Web3. And that is the thing. So I really think there is a huge problem with that. And I think the utility that they keep talking about, I haven't seen many utilities from any NFT project. I really don't want, how many hoodies do I need? I mean, I'm in Web3. I want digital assets. Give me a whitelist to, what is it? Chanel. What was that Nina and Chanel art? Give me a whitelist to projects like the artist you told me. Give me digital assets. I can't travel and go to parties or IRLs. I'm behind a computer. I think this is something that it's really, really needs to be discussed a lot.
I think your huge place online, the rewards for the community need to be online. IRL events are nice, but that's not nobody. That just is a complete disconnect from what we're actually doing. So I think that you're right. The community needs to be rewarded where they are, which is online.
And
Digital assets.
And the people that are actually doing the work. Like you need to watch out for your people. This is
you need advocates. You need advocates within your projects for sure, for the people who and make sure people are getting taken care of. But that's a founder issue. That's not for us to do.
But the thing is, like the community is putting money into the team. Are they getting any of it? Like what utility is that? That's just something that I just don't understand.
I don't know.
it's really, really focused on very well in Web 2, in successful Web 2 businesses. And it seems like in Web 3, they totally canceled that out. And it's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I would only add there too for the community side that as how you engage within the project is crucial from a founder side. Like a great example of Chimpers, like I'm in a Chimpers VIP chat. It's maxed at 75. It's kind of similar how everyone did the Quirkies chat early on. But one of the most active people in the Chimpers chat is every day is Timpers, which is the founder of Chimpers, is in there every day. And if we do a space, he's not in every space. He's in a lot of the spaces though. But he's engaging within the community. And like I had an issue where some other guy, basically I defended Prez. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I defended Prez a little bit, but also didn't just call this other guy. And he blocked me. Because he blocked me, I got kicked from my Chimpers VIP group. And I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I'm a big holder in Chimpers. I'd like to still talk with the Chimpers holders. So I DM'd Timpers. And I was like, hey, man, I don't know what happened. I don't know if you saw what happened, but like, obviously I'm still a huge supporter of Chimpers. I don't want to like lose that group. That would kind of suck. And he immediately responded like, hey, I'm not sure what happened. Let me try to figure it out. I'm not that good with like Twitter or whatever. I was like, all right, no worries. But anyways, he was really engaging and helpful. So I think like it's also, and I think another part there in the Cash on that side that's really interesting is how you got pinged to go help become a community lead in another project. It's so funny how certain projects don't value their current community and what they have for free, when other projects are like, hey, I'll give you 3 ETH to come do the exact same shit you're doing right now on our community, so I can have you like working for us and working with us for the next month or two, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling how that is sometimes the case. And so we see that a lot right now, where you're just not focusing on what the community is. And so I think that community can be great, but to your point, like loyalty can run out. But it's like, how is the community being utilized is a huge question there too. And like a lot of it is with like the ape side. A lot of the ape community is not actually true community. It's a lot of subset communities, but it's a mutual respect amongst other ape holders. And so like none of us, when I had a Bored Ape and now I only have a mutant, but like none of us have ever kind of said that we had to do certain things or you have to support everybody. And some people don't like each other, but at the same time, like collectively, we all are very supportive of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And then individually, we have our small subset groups. We made connections with different people for different reasons. And so that's a very unique part when we talk about community. Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
Like if someone wants to come and join with us, if they have an ape, it's like, oh shit, yeah, you got an ape, like come join us. Or like for me, it's also been with Doodles, like for a long time with CyberCon holders. I still have one of those. And so like it kind of always depends on what you're evaluating and like how you're measuring what that community kind of is. But I think a lot of it also does go back to like, are you, I talked about early on in the quirky spaces, like, are you using the PFP as your profile picture? That's the easiest way to identify like I am in this community. Because it's, again, if you have 10 NFTs and you only can choose one to be your PFP. And so the one you choose is the one that, should be the community that you support and want to rep the most. And so that's kind of a way you vote with your PFP, just like you vote with your wallet. And so, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you for your guys' time. There's a lot of good projects out there. There's a lot of projects still finding their way out there. We are still finding our way in many ways. Dave, since we last talked, you are full-time now in the Web3 space. How's that been going? Good?
I'll be candid. Like, no, humbly, it's been tough. So I am launching the investment fund, and so that's still going. We're like officially starting to raise this week, which is great. It's been like 5 months of just lawyers and banks and a bunch of other BS that just takes a long time. And so that's super exciting, but obviously tough market to be raising money in. And so we'll see kind of how that plays out. But yeah, I think the tougher thing is like trying to find mediums to make money on. Like I don't ideally want a full-time job, but especially if we only raise say $5 to $10 million, it might warrant or be more flexible that I can have a full-time job. And so for me, it's trying to figure out what that right medium is. Like, do I go invest in myself and go back to content? Do I go back and try to do something in the Web 2 space? Do I try to find a Web 3 company to work with? Do I try to work with more projects? And so for me, it feels like a lot of opportunities are out there, but it's just either dialing in the right one or finding the right person to talk to. So I think the challenge is right now, I'll be candid, like right now, the challenge I think on a lot of the space and how they're evaluating things, like it's very hard to convey your skill set right now. And so like I come from a long line of like 10 years in like merchandising and retail and shit like that, that like can look good in certain sides, but I left that company at the end. So I've been out of that company now for about 2 months. On the inverse side though, my Web3 is like 18 months of being in Web3, but like I can say I spent like 2,000 hours plus studying all the shit in Web3 and like engaging everything and active in crypto Twitter and Discord, whatever. It's very hard to prove that without like, oh yeah, I was a community manager for this, I did that. And then I can say I helped things, but it's very hard to not show without a job. And so I'm in this weird little medium too, where it's like, how do you convey that? Like, and then a lot of places, like even in Web3 are like, oh, like send me your resume. And I'm trying to share like, hey, here's my Twitter, here's my, still show my LinkedIn, but like, here's my YouTube, here's my NFT NYC talks. Like there's other ways to present it, but it's also like, do they take the time to actually look into those? And I'm trying to also push, like, just have a call with me. Like, if you have a call with me, I'd be shocked if you didn't want me to help work on whatever you're working on. And so that's a very weird thing that's going on right now with me personally, is trying to find that way to have, be it income or just another way to make money right now in the space. Because I don't want to necessarily just sell out. And like, I have a lot of, it's because I'm in the game space. I have a lot of games like, hey, can you tweet this? We'll pay you or do this, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And so, yeah, so that honestly, that's a challenge. So if anyone is listening to this or wants to talk about that, let me know.
Excellent. Yeah. But I mean, like you said, your reputation, it's kind of hard to quantify that into a single page or even an email, or, it's very robust, especially in Web3 where there's so much.
Yeah, and I probably have like 1,000 people on Twitter that would back me in an instant or hire me in an instant if they were in a position where it's like, hey, I need someone to do this, like come help me. But it's hard to like convey that in some other medium. And like some people are super successful in what they're doing or whatever, but they need more people hands-on or like local. And so it's a very unique time in that too. It's just like how to, I have a lot of, as you said, like I was labeled an influencer, but there is, I think, a lot of people that have come to me on the side or even in space have been like, wow, like that was so knowledgeable and helpful. Please come more often. Or I appreciate your insights and all this and that. And it's just like, how do I make money off of that? It's like, I leverage that into a company or into a consultancy to do more of that. And so I have the consultancy on the side too. I'm trying to do more of that too, but it's like also trying to convince the Web2 companies to bring you in. Again, it's like, how do you prove that on a track record or a resume to be like, hey, yeah, here's how I'm going to help consult with you. So it's a lot of learning, but
whatever happened to the tax endeavor, the tax business? I thought you were doing Web3.
Oh, we're still doing that. Yeah. So basically, that's my best friend from forever. We're still doing it. Basically, I won't make much from this year. We have it set up where basically he has a fixed salary. Anything beyond that, we split 50-50. Versus like me taking like royalties for consulting and sharing people. And so he filled his books for this last year. And so I have plenty more clients than his way, but he doesn't have any room for them. And so we're debating, like, do we hire more people? What are we going to do? And so like he's hired on a couple of part-time people to help just, do simple Excel shit. And so, yeah, so that's still going good, but that's like, that's not going to be a game changer right now. Maybe in a couple of years, but not right now.
We're building. These are the early days. We got to pour the concrete. Before you can even pour the concrete, you got to get the backhoe out. You got to dig everything out, get everything level. So we're still in that part of it. I think Web3 is in good hands between the three fellas here, plus other, ladies and gentlemen out there in the world. We're going to do our best, so this is, Real Talk Docs podcast for Web3 and NFT. I'm joined by Payman Cash, who's been here before, and by Disaster, formerly Dave versus Axie, his second foray onto the show as well. Really good conversation. I hope people found value here, found something interesting. We'd love to hear from you, comment, talk with us. All of our links will be in the description of all of this. But I think we're gonna get out of here for today. Hopefully these fellas will be back soon and we can talk some more fun NFT Web3 stuff, maybe focus in on different topics, different projects, anything. So thank you guys for your time. Any final words, Cash or Disaster?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, this has been a good time, guys. Until our next meeting, take it easy.